Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I kind of want to talk about the random topic of speedsters. Now, if you're not familiar with what a speedster is, speedsters is the name given to people in the DC universe, much like the Flash, as well as Reverse Flash, Kid Flash, all the people who have this like superhuman speed special abilities in the DC universe. More often than not, people kind of get their abilities different ways, but typically it all stems back to the Speed Force and the connection to that and everything. And it's like that ultimately leads to the question, well, Michael, what is the Speed Force? That's a whole conversation in itself. It's this omnipotent thing that basically bestows super speed upon people. It's just like, I highly recommend, if you're very curious, I highly recommend you dive deeper into it. Obviously, you might want to be careful with the whole Flash TV show being a thing. You might, spoiling certain things for yourself. But nevertheless, this video specifically, I wanted to talk about how scary speedsters can be. Like, because of the Flash TV show, the Flash has always been a hero that, like, I was like, oh yeah, he's super fast and everything and cool. But thanks to the TV show, because I never read comic books growing up, and I'm only slightly familiar with some of the stuff from the comic books, specifically about the Flash, that the TV show gave me a different perspective on the Flash, and now I love him. He's easily one of my favorite superheroes now because of the TV show, because it broadened my eyes to just how amazing, and in some cases super overpowered, the Flash as well as speedsters in general are. So I'm making this video to kind of talk about just how scary speedsters are, recognizing both the speedsters that are villains and how scary they are and who they are, as well as in what they do, but also just how scary like some of our heroes like the Flash or Kid Flash or Impulse could be if they were bad. I mean, obviously right off the bat, you have to talk about the fact is of how fast they are. They are like the fastest beings in existence. It's always hard to judge exactly how fast any particular speedster is. In this particular case, let's start off with Barry Allen himself, the Flash. But let's use him from the TV show, for example, because I was reading an article yesterday that kind of broke down his speed in certain aspects. It's like Barry from the very beginning, from the very first episode of the Flash TV show, when he got his speed was roughly about 300 miles per hour. It was kind of like, I think they were saying that was kind of his top speed at the time, I think. But then you compare that to how fast he is at the end of season 2's finale, but it's like triple that, because it's like 1,500 miles per hour. Granted, that's with the tachyon and everything like that. I don't know how far his speed is going. Obviously, he's even faster now, because that's the thing too. Speedsters are always getting faster and faster, especially with Barry, because he's always training, because he's always going up against speedsters who are faster than him. To kind of put that in perspective for you, I don't know exactly what would be kind of like the best range to kind of lock in a speedster speed, but to kind of put it in comparison, like a lot of times at some point speedsters are considered to be able to go as fast, if not faster, than the speed of light. To kind of put that in a relative, like, even then, like, it's hard to really quantify that, because I'm not really familiar for the exact number of like what the speed of light moves, like what the speed of light is, so it's really hard for me to even quantify that and put it in a way that's digestible for someone. Just know they're super fast. But kind of going along the same lines of just how fast a speedster is, like how much that they can do, like how life for a speedster is, like even a second can feel like a lifetime for a speedster, because they live that fast, they are that fast. On top of that, like the fact is, I mentioned earlier how speedsters can constantly get faster. As you know, a constant element that has popped up even within the Flash TV show is the fact of stealing other speedsters' speed and making yourself faster, and that's an element that's popped up in comic books as well. So that's another scary factor of it. Like if a villain, like, take Zoom for example, because he actually stole Barry's speed, if he stole the speed of every speedster that he could really come across, just how unstoppably fast he could be. But this is kind of a more isolated thing, is the speedster's special ability to phase. Like if you don't know, speedsters can move so fast. In particular, I think the science, or rather science fiction behind how they work, is that by vibrating their molecules at a certain frequency and move them so fast, they can literally phase through objects. This is kind of a go-to move. It's one of Barry's signature moves. It's not just his, but it's also a lot of supervillains like Zoom as well as Reverse Flash implement this in their own way as well. And it is probably like another deadly weapon in a speedster's arsenal, is by vibrating their bodies so fast that phasing through objects also include people. So for example, like Reverse Flash and Zoom, their favorite way of taking care of someone is vibrating their hands so fast that they literally stab it through someone like a sword or a spear, killing them. Barry never utilizes it like that. It never, like, obviously Barry uses it to kind of get around circumstances. Maybe he's captured, or maybe like he needs to get through something really quickly. But it's like, to think about, like, the fact is that that's an arsenal in a Speedster's weapon, and if Barry ever felt like he could just do that. I mean, there have been times where he has to kind of wonder, you know, whether or not to cross that line or not. I honestly think that's actually like the go-to Speedster way of, like, a supervillain wise killing someone. I remember reading this in some comic book. I don't know whether it's like a really old one or fairly new one, whatever the case may be. There's actually a comic book series where Reverse Flash, Eobard, I have to say call him by name because there's whole like, oh, whether he's Reverse Flash or Professor Zoom, once again, whether they're two separate people, that whole conversation. Apparently that's actually how he killed Iris in one particular case. Granted, he didn't stab her through the chest, he vibrated his hand through her skull and killed her like that. Brutal all on its own. Granted, CW is not going that route. Finally getting to it, I apologize. It's the whole aspect of, because speedsters are so fast, they can cross into other dimensions. Obviously in the DC universe, there's the whole aspect of all these different Earths. Obviously the multiverse situation, but that's scary to think about. The fact of the matter, especially if there's a world that doesn't have speedsters. Could you think about the ramifications of someone like, oh, there's a world out there that doesn't have people that can keep up with me? Lo and behold, let me go be there, be a super villain in that world and kind of run things, you know. Let's not forget, probably like the most deadly ability that's in a speedster's arsenal is the fact is that they can time travel. And obviously, like, season 3 showed, spoilers, but season 3 shows that Barry not only can travel to the past, can also travel to the future. And I mean, to be fair, it's not like Barry was the first one to time travel. Obviously, like, you have people like Savitar and Reverse Flash time traveling. How deadly it can be that a character can come back and change time. That whole Reverse Flash whole motivation was to come back in time to try and kill Barry. And in fact, what did he do? He ended up killing Barry's mom, which turns into a whole cycle thing of like, oh, the Reverse Flash created the Flash, but the Flash created Reverse Flash by existing. It's just a whole endless cycle of they built upon each other. Along those same lines of being able to change time in history, there's the whole aspect of Flashpoint being created. We see the ramifications of what happens when you change the past. It has drastic ramifications. Obviously, I've kind of talked around Flashpoint. I won't go into anything specific, but I highly recommend, once again, I've talked about it before, but if you have not seen anything Flashpoint related, I highly recommend that you either read the comic book or you watch the animated movie adaptation of it, which is on Netflix if you want to watch it, to really get to the nitty-gritty of what goes down because of Flashpoint, what big changes happen. That had like a worldwide effect. Along those same lines of creating Flashpoint as well as time traveling itself, there's a ramification of basically destroying the space-time continuum, because Jay Garrick had to be like, yo, Barry, stop changing the past. You're trying to go back in time and fix things, right? Well, you would never get things quite back to the way they were. Yeah, you do things, this thing might go back to the way it was, but then this other thing that you might not have any idea about might change. Maybe these changes will be better, maybe they'll be worse. There's just so many layers to this whole time travel thing. The fact of the matter is, they aren't gods. They are men that have been bestowed upon a gift, and it's not up to them to change history. Obviously, being the supervillain that he is, a Reverse Flash doesn't care. Granted, in his eyes, it's like, I'm smart enough. I know how to take care of, to not, you know, screw up time too much in the whole situation. It's a whole thing. But basically, constantly going back and forth, you're breaking the timeline, the space-time continuum, a little bit at a time. And the more and more you do it, the more it gets cracked. And eventually, it'll kind of just like kind of implode on itself. I mean, ultimately, like, showing you, like, going back to the Flashpoint example, it's like, literally Flashpoint restarted the entire DC universe. An entire universe got restarted because of what Flashpoint did, and that was a speedster thing. And it's scary to think about how drastically people's lives could be different without even realizing it. Only speedsters remember like how things were supposed to be. I mean, obviously everyone has their own respective reasons for wanting to do what they want to, like Reverse Flash and everything, but like truly imagine like if Barry didn't care about the consequences and just kept going and just doing it back and forth. Like, even though Reverse Flash is like a supervillain and everything like that, even he has his levels of like, I mean, to be fair, Flashpoint was kind of like, there's some moments in Flashpoint he was like, I don't care about things being the way it is. As long as you die in Aftermath, I don't care. So his hatred for like Barry runs that deep. So there's that level of almost not caring. But typically most people are like, I want the universe to be around long enough for me to kind of rule and conquer and do my thing. But it's like, imagine if someone like Barry just like did it without recourse and just did it and willy-nilly changing and doing whatever they want to, the catastrophic effect. It's scary when you, and mind-boggling when you actually break it down, like what a speedster is capable of. I'd love to get your thoughts about it. Like, did you agree with everything I've said about speedsters being scary? Or like, what other things are you familiar with that you're like, oh, there's this, maybe there's like this one thing from this one-off comic book that speedsters are capable of this, blah, 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 blah. Let me know in the comments down below, like, all your thoughts about everything. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good